Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Sam, and I'm here to share a few things about ice cream today. I'm a culinary mentor and chef with Basics Market, and today I'd like to show you a nice custard base ice cream, and then talk about some ways to flavor it and stuff like that. And then also we're going to make some ice cream cones, which is exciting to be able to have an ice cream cone you made and put in some homemade ice cream. What could be better, right? So we're going to be utilizing some of our in-house products. We have a dairy, and we're going to be featuring the Lulabelle's milk and cream for this ice cream, as well as the Gwendolyn's eggs. So all this is organic product to make a very fine ice cream. So let's go ahead and get rolling here, or get churning. So ice cream comes in many varieties, and especially nowadays, there's so many sort of like alternative frozen dessert type things made with different sorts of milks and things. And what I'm demonstrating today is a custard-based ice cream, basically a French vanilla. And it is the French style of ice cream, so that just means that we are going to be using eggs. The other sort of ice cream that is very common is the Philadelphia style ice cream, and that's sort of the same formula, but minus the eggs. And what the eggs do for the ice cream is they act as an emulsifier, so they bring everything together, and they also help coat the ice crystals in the ice cream as it freezes and keeps them small, and that's what gives us a smooth texture and a really that creamy mouthfeel that we look for in a nice ice cream. So the benefit of the egg in there also, or having some sort of emulsifier, is that it's going to save a little better in your freezer. A Philadelphia style ice cream will tend to freeze up really hard and then melt quickly. So those are things to consider. Both taste great, and especially right out of the ice cream machine. So a few things. One is you do need some sort of ice cream machine, whether it's this ball, they have the frozen ball that you can toss around and get some ice cream made that way, or this machine here is like up towards a $500 ice cream machine, which works very nicely. Or there's like $50 ice cream machines that work just great too. But what we're trying to do with the ice cream is keep it moving and keep it cold, keep those ice crystals down, and get air into the ice cream. And that's the one ingredient that is not showing up on the recipe, is air is part of the ice cream formulation. And we'll talk a little more about that later. Let's go ahead and get this recipe started. So I have a kind of a medium saucepan here, and I'm not showing the Philadelphia style just because that's really easy. You're just mixing milk, cream, and sugar, and then a flavoring and putting it in the ice cream maker. But the custard style, the French style of ice cream, there's a little technique involved, and that's what I'd like to show you today. And it's making a custard, and custards are really fun to make, and once you get the hang of it, they're quite simple and very versatile for like dessert sauces or puddings and things like that. So this is kind of a frozen custard, although we're not going to take it so thick that it's going to be pudding consistency. So I have my saucepan here, and then you're going to need a kind of a large bowl is a handy thing. And we're going to combine 1.5 cups milk and 1.5 cups cream. So I have here my Lulabelle's organic whole milk. And so I'm using whole milk because we want as much fat to coat all those water molecules as we can get in this ice cream. And it is challenging to make a low fat ice cream, and that is something that I've been working on as well, and I'm finding it challenging. It's a lot easier to make a nice full fat, full cream and egg custard ice cream. It's nice and friendly to freeze. So I'm going to put a cup and a half of the milk. So this ice cream recipe, we're doing 50-50 milk and cream. A common ratio for ice cream, and you're welcome to try this as well, is 2 parts cream to 1 part milk, and that will be a little bit richer. So in this instance, it would be 2 cups of cream and 1 cup of milk. But by doing the 50-50 milk and cream, we're lightening it up a little bit. And and then you can play with this formula, to get it to where you like it. And just the more milk you add to cream, the little harder it will set your ice cream, and also it will form ice crystals easier. So that's something to consider. But really, you could use all whole milk. You could use skim milk. You can play around with this, but just keep in mind that the lower the fat content, the harder the set is, and the less smooth the ice cream will be. All right, so here's our 3 cups of milk and cream here. Now, this recipe is formulated for this quart size ice cream maker. So we're going to be producing a quart of ice cream, or 2 pints, or that's also 4 cups. So 4 cups of ice cream is what we're going to get out of this. Okay. So now we're going to pull out a 1/2 cup of the milk cream mixture, and I'm going to put that into a separate bowl. And what I like to do, I'm using a dry measure just to pull this out, right? And then I'm going to measure into my liquid measure, and what happens is the dry measure is a little less than the liquid, but it's a good way to approximate. So now I'm going to go ahead, set that aside. That's a 1/2 cup, and that's going to come in handy for the tempering. And now I'm going to go ahead and put our milk cream mixture into the saucepan, bring my bowl back, and I have this over medium heat. So we want to get this milk up to about 160, 165, and a thermometer for telling temperature is pretty handy for the ice cream making process, because we want to keep it all under or around 170, 175 at the highest, because we don't want to cook the eggs when we get the eggs. And again, this is all custard technology. It's just a matter of keeping, you don't want scrambled eggs. And we're using a lot of egg yolks here. We're using 6 egg yolks. You can get away also with less egg yolks for sure. This is a very rich custardy ice cream. It's going to have a beautiful like yellow color to it, and really like those classic French vanillas. You can bring it down to like 2 egg yolks though, if you're watching your cholesterol and just want it a little lighter. And you can have, again, you can use no eggs. I did jot down, if you're interested, I have a Philadelphia style ice cream recipe, and that would simply be 3 cups of milk cream, so that's that 2 cups cream, 1 cup milk, whatever, 3/4 cup of sugar, and a tablespoon of vanilla. And you can throw just like a pinch of salt. I've been putting just a pinch of salt in the ice creams, kind of brings out the sweetness, a little bit. Okay, so that's a Philadelphia style, right? But we're doing a nice French style here. All right, so once you get your milk warmed up, we have the 1/2 cup of milk cream mixture in our big bowl here. And I have my egg yolks separate here. And I reserved 2 egg whites for the cones. So part of making the ice cream cones was thinking of ways to utilize the egg whites, right? Because you're going to have all these egg whites left over. You could make meringue bowls for your ice cream, which would be really cool, like pavlovas, with egg whites, right? And you can reserve 2 egg whites and make about 7 ice cream cones, and that's what we're doing with this. So I'm just going to go ahead and mix my yolks into the cold 1/2 cup of cream and milk. Get that nice and whisked in. And then here the milk is warming. And so once you're seeing a little bit of steam, we're kind of good to temper it into the egg yolks. Yes, we have a question.
Yes, Chef Sam, is there a replacement for the sugar? Could you use some other sweetener? Johnson would like to know.
Yes, and before I answer that question, I did forget to mention to everybody, go ahead and ask questions on your question deal there on your screen, and we will answer them as best we can, including this one. Sweeteners, sweeteners is really very interesting with the ice cream and the freezing process. So granulated sugar works well. Better yet is like a dextrose. So there's sucrose and dextrose, and just really quickly on the dextrose, it works a little smoother. Helps, again, we're just keeping all those ice crystals down, right? You can use honey. Honey is all right. It's going to be a little more granular for you. Maple syrup, I believe the ratio is 3/4 cup of maple syrup for a cup of sugar. So depending on the sweetener, you're going to have usually it'll be 1-to-1, but you might have to do some tweaking. But you can use different sweeteners. Just regular granulated white sugar is a good overall sweetener for ice cream, but honey does get good results. It will, of course, taste like honey, which is nice. And then corn syrup you'll notice, like in commercial ice creams, there's often a ton of ingredients, right? And corn syrup comes up a lot. And corn syrup actually, unfortunately, it's not good for us. Our bodies can't handle it really well, but it does do great things for your ice cream in that it helps with the body of the ice cream. And again, it gives a nice overall smoothness. So generally, inverted sugars work really well in ice cream. But there's a lot there. But yes, you can use alternative sweeteners. Okay, so you can see I kind of got a nice warm milk here. And I'm going to go into that egg mixture slowly. And that's what I have this ladle for, I just remembered. So just like nice little small ladles full. Oh, and I suppose we should put some sugar in there, right? So 2/3 cup of sugar. Let's not forget. That would have been interesting. I'm talking about sweeteners, but I'm not using them. So I put the 2/3 cup sugar in there, and you want to just get that nice and stirred in. And it will get plenty of, and part of this is, you're melting the sugar, right? You're breaking it down. And So we're just going to go with small ladlefuls. And this is the tempering. So the idea here is just to go a little bit at a time so we don't cook the eggs. And we're introducing them to our warm milk and cream. So just keep a constant whisk. Put them in. And the reason we're not just dumping the egg mixture into our hot milk is it would really overwhelm the eggs and cook them. So we were just being gentle. That you need to be gentle with your ice cream. All right. But I do leave a little bit in the bottom of the pan, a little bit of that milk, cream, sugar mixture, just to kind of cushion the fall of this custard stuff going in. And you can see we already have a lovely yellowish color. So I'm going to hold on to this bowl. And one thing I don't mention in the recipe is the sieve, and this is really a nice thing to utilize after you get your custard warmed up, because we'll pour it through the sieve, and if there was any egg or any milk, proteins that sort of held together and clumped, this will catch them, and then you won't have that end up in your final ice cream. So here we want to just sort of smooth the, trying to get a little butter melted here on the side. I recommend you just kind of stay with this, and just bring it to slow heat. You don't, so on the recipe it mentions a simmer, and it is a simmer in a way. It's more of an oil simmer where you're going to hear it. You don't necessarily want to see a lot of bubbles here. So again, the thermometer is handy in that you're going to get, we're going to bring it to about 170, 175 degrees. So we're already at 168. So we're pretty close. One thing you can check here is with a spoon, you can pull some of your custard out and see if it stays separate. If it's thick enough that it doesn't come back together on the back of the spoon, we're really, really close. So I think we're good. Any more, and we start to get scrambled eggs. And so it doesn't take long there. And now I'm going to go ahead and pour this custardy mixture through my sieve. Thank you. And I have some nice melted butter for the cones coming up. Okay, so yeah, you can see there's just a couple little pieces of kind of some coagulate, which is a terrible word to use here, but some stuff that came together. And now we have a nice smooth base. Now we're going to add a tablespoon of vanilla to this because this is a vanilla base. You don't have to add the vanilla if you're doing like a flavor, which you don't, and you don't want that vanilla background in there. You don't have to add it, but it is nice, and I usually add it for even if I'm doing any sort of flavor. It's just a nice background flavor for everything, really. But other flavorings, here's like a peppermint extract. You could add some peppermint in here, and it would be peppermint lemon extract. I could do like a lemon. That would just be maybe a couple teaspoons, a tablespoon of these extracts, and that's a really easy way to flavor your ice cream. Other ways to flavor it, if you want a chocolate ice cream, I wrote down a little chocolate formula that would work with this base if you're interested. And I will read it to you now. You take some cocoa powder, like 3 to 6 tablespoons, depending how dark you want it. Dutch process is good for this application. And then 5 or 6 ounces of like a bittersweet chocolate, and chop that up. And then you're going to melt that into some of your milk cream mixture and get a nice kind of a liquid chocolate mixture. And then you just stir that into this at this stage, okay? Some add-ins you put in after the ice cream is almost set up, like you put in like chunks of, say like chunks of cookies and that sort of thing, brownies, whatever you're putting in there, and even fresh berries. Although with fresh fruit, I like to prepare it a little bit with a little bit of sugar and even cook it down a little bit. But again, we'll talk about that in 1 second. As far as what happens to this now, ideally, you have an ice bath. And an ice bath would just be some ice cubes and some water, and you'd set this bowl into that. And then after it cools, enough that it can go in your refrigerator without messing up your refrigerator. So just a few minutes to let some of the initial steam come off. Put it into your refrigerator and cool it down as quickly as you can. What's handy also is kind of a large thing. Troy, if you would, there's a half pan, one of those stainless guys up there. Yeah, that'll work, or that's a full pan. But something that is kind of wide, that's great. And see props everywhere. But something like this, and this is kind of overkill for such a small amount, but like this will break down really quickly, and then put this on ice, and then have this go into the refrigerator, and then you'll have a nice base to work with. And that should be at least 4 hours to overnight. And so a lot of times I'll make my base the night before I'm going to use it. Yes, we have a question.
Yes, Alice would like to know at what point would you add fresh fruit or frozen fruit to the base?
Yeah, okay. So for fruit, I like to, here's a ratio that will work with this recipe. 2 cups fresh or frozen fruit and half a cup of sugar. And I just put that in a saucepan and cook it down to go like jam, like you're making jam. And then I cool that. You want everything with the ice cream to be cold, including your the equipment you're using. Anything you can chill down when you're working with the ice cream after you've cooked it is great, because all that just helps it keep creamy and smooth. So I chill like the bowl that goes into this deal. At home, I have like a KitchenAid attachment ice cream maker, which is okay. It's not the best, but it works all right. And that's just like a big bowl that is that you chill or freeze, and it stays real frozen, and then you just whip the ice cream around in that. But you can also take that fruit, like say that 2 cups of fruit and half a cup of sugar, and just toss it and macerate it, put it in the refrigerator, let it sit for a while, and then you can put that in your ice cream. Now that goes in right towards the end of the churning, so while the ice cream is still soft, yet it will accept stuff in there, and that way everything doesn't sink to the bottom. It's suspended, okay? All right, so now we're chilling the base, and again, if you wouldn't mind, Troy, there's a chilled base in the other side of the refrigerator there, and utilizing our IT expert here is very helpful also with getting stuff. Thank you so much. All the things I forgot. So here it is, the half. This one has been chilling for like 8 hours, so it's nice and cool. So that's what your base is going to look like after it's chilled. And then you have your bowl, And again, you know, all the ice cream makers are a little different. You might have a hand cranker and you're putting salt and ice around it, or, you know, a machine like this. But whatever the case, you're going to put your, this is frozen, right? Nice and cold, so I want to work sort of fast. So what's handy about an ice cream maker like this is you're getting a lot of air in there. And so back to that air being one of the ingredients of the ice cream, all ice cream contains air anywhere from 20%, like that's like the like a Ben and Jerry's ratio is 20% air, up to like the maximum, the legal limit of air in ice cream is 50%. So your less expensive ice creams will have a 50% air in them, and but that's the limit. So now we're just going to go ahead and pop our lid on there, lock it down, and then let it spin. So generally, it'll take about half an hour in this machine. This is, you know, has a lot of freezer action. It's spinning it, and this machine really gets a nice air or overrun in the ice cream world. The air put into the ice cream is called overrun, and you can control the overrun a little bit by the amount of ice cream you put into the canister. So here I have this canister is about half full, and so that allows for quite a bit of air. I mean, up to that, maybe that 50% limit, right? But I don't think it'll quite get there, but it's going to get probably like 30% overrun. So depending, if you want less overrun, you just fill your canister up more overrun, more air, less. And so you can decide, you know, what's ideal for you. Okay, so let's go ahead, and that's spinning, and we should have some nice ice cream in about 30 minutes there. Luckily, I made some ahead of time that we can look at. But let's go ahead and make some ice cream cones. And so this is really fun, right, to make our own homemade ice cream cones. And it's fairly easy, but once again, there is a little technique and a little bit of a learning curve with it. So let's get into it. So we're going to make a batter, and it's kind of like a French tuile cookie, or it's a lot like a fortune cookie to me. It's a really nice little batter, and I don't know if you can hear this, it's got a little crunch to it, right? Okay, so what you're going to need are those 2 egg whites, that we reserved. I reserved from an earlier batch. A bowl, a whisk. We have half a cup of sugar, half a cup of all-purpose flour, a tablespoon of water, 2 tablespoons of whole milk, 2 tablespoons of melted butter, a teaspoon of vanilla, and then here's how it goes. So I have an oven preheated to 400 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and start with the egg whites, and I'm going to go ahead and add half a cup of sugar. And so here, we just want to whisk this up. It doesn't have to be like, you know, whipped up to a soft peaks or anything, but you want to combine it pretty good. Just a good whisking. And yeah, yes, a question.
We have a couple questions, Chef Sam,
Yeah.
about, a couple about the air. So how do you make sure you don't put too much air into the ice cream, and what's the difference in texture if you've got purchased an ice cream that has more air in it? And then Alice had a question about whether she can put the ice cream in molds and put it into the freezer instead of making the cones?
All right, well, to address that last one, so Alice, you're saying you want to not put it in the machine, but just into molds, or after the ice cream is made, you could put it in a mold like an ice cream popsicle, something like that, and that could work. You do need that aeration, that overrun, to make the consistency of the ice cream so it's scoopable, and that's why we have the motion, the coldness, and that sort of whipping motion. Now you can see I put in the milk, I put it in the vanilla, I'm putting in a pinch of salt. Oh yeah, and then that reminds me, I'm putting a pinch of salt into my ice cream base as well. So that's like 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt into our cones. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some melted butter, 2 tablespoons, and then the flour. And so we want to go kind of slow with the flour. So as far as that overrun question, I mean, I don't think you're in danger of getting too much overrun in this size of a batch. You know, and the overrun is, it's going to give you, homemade ice cream is generally, it's a little more dense than commercial ice cream because, you know, we're using really good creams and all, you know, there's nothing in here but the creams, the cream, the milk, the egg yolk, and some sugar, really. So, you know, the air is what's going to give us a little bit of fluff and lift and some nice scoopability. In commercial ice cream, yeah, like the less expensive ice creams that are mostly air, what you'll notice is they're going to melt really quickly and kind of disappear in your mouth. With ice cream, you have two kind of things to look at, and that's texture and body. And so the ingredients will dictate the texture, which is sort of how it works in your mouth, and then the body is like when you're scooping it, like what's it doing. And a lot of times, and what I've been playing around with using like non-fat milk to try to make a low-fat ice cream, is you start looking at stabilizers and things like that, which come from natural ingredients as well, like you know, tapioca starch and guar gum and locust gum. These are all derived from natural sources, and they're not terrible things unto themselves, but it's just when you get all that, when that's all an ice cream is made of, in air and sugar and just a tiny bit of cream, then it's just not as nice of a product, and it's not as nice to eat. But there are some really nicely balanced, like a lot of the vegan type ice creams have a lot of these kind of natural additives, stabilizers, because you need something to, again, encapsulate the water molecules, keep them small, keep them from forming big ice crystals. And so that's what some of these stabilizers do. And you should, you could play around with these at home as well, like, in the Portland area, or I guess nationwide, you got, like, Bob's Red Mill is putting out a lot of these, like, tapioca starches. And I've even tried, like, potato starch in ice cream. I've tried a lot of different stuff, guar gum, xanthan gum. These are all kind of things that you can add. But back to what we're doing with this, it's just a really, we're using the eggs, and the eggs are really the greatest emulsifier, stabilizer, and keep it nice and easy. All right, so you can see we have a beautiful cone batter here. And to finish, we're going to go ahead and make some rounds. So always exciting to bring out the tape measure. See if we'll get we want a 6-inch circle. So I'm going to use about 1/8 of a cup of the batter. And here I have a Silpat, which is this rubbery kind of mat thing. This is handy for the cones. You could also use like parchment paper, just spray it or brush it with oil first. But the Silpat works really well for these. Again, the oven's at 400 degrees. I'm going to take this eighth of a cup of batter, put it onto my Silpat, and you know, I'm just going to do one of these guys for a demo. You could fit 2 or 3 depending on your agility with this sort of thing. And so you're just going to make a nice, about a 6-inch circle. And you want to go just really thin in it. And it's strange because you're going really thin and you just have this idea of an ice cream cone. And then here's the tape measure. And that's 6 by 6. So we're in good shape. Get a little more of a circle there. And I'm going to pop this into my 400 degree oven for a few minutes. Okay, so well, your first batch is cooking, and again, this recipe should make you about 7 cones or so. You can get some more going. So again, it's an eighth of a cup batter into a circle. And so these cones, this part of the cone is done when the edges start to brown and it's all nice and dry. And you don't want it to be crispy because we're going to mold them. And this is kind of there's a craft section to this class. And so you'll need some tinfoil, and they sell ice cream cone molds, which are just kind of like horns, kind of. They look, well, like this, right? But I just make them out of tinfoil. So I have some foil, and I'm just going to kind of make my ice cream cone shape the way I want it. And so you kind of want to start with a square. And then just go ahead and form your cone. Okay, and then you can use the top. There's going to be there's this little sort of excess at the top, and I use that to just hold everything together. Okay, and there is an ice cream cone mold. And then I take like some paper. You could take like newspaper or something. Yeah, question.
Roosevelt would like to know if the batter can be saved in the fridge to make another fresh batch and how long it will keep.
Yeah, sorry, I had to check in that deal. Yeah, I think the batter you could save in the fridge, and I think it would be good for a couple days. I probably wouldn't go more than 3 days on it. I think things might start to separate, and so get a little funny. But yeah, all right, there you go. So that stuffing just kind of stabilizes our ice cream cone, and then you want to make sure your base is good like that, so it stands on its own. And this oven is pretty quick. So it actually only takes about 3 minutes here. So here we go. It's nice and dry. You can see we have a little bit of color here. Pardon me. I got my back up there. Okay. So now this is very hot, and this is kind of tricky because you want to work with this while it's hot, but you don't want to burn yourself, and you know, that can happen. So I have various shapes and sizes of my molds here, and you know, it just kind of depends. Like if you want a wider cone, a wider mouth on the cone, or a more narrow one, or what have you, but it doesn't matter too much. You just go with what you got. So with this, it's sort of handy to, this is where the Silpat comes in. You can use the Silpat to get under your cone cookie. And then you can see it's very pliable, right? And here, you just want to roll around your mold. Okay, and then we're going to pinch the bottom. You want to pinch the bottom together, and it still is not going to necessarily be a perfect seal, but that's why we have chocolate melted to make a little plug, a chocolate plug. So what I like to do at this point is actually put it back in the oven for a minute. And it's just going to get it a little crisper, and I'm going to leave it on the mold and put it back in the oven. And you want to leave it on the mold if you do this technique. You don't necessarily have to go back in the oven, but it does help crisp it up just a little bit more. And by leaving it on the mold, when they're in the oven, they first get soft. So if you don't leave them on the mold, they will collapse. So that's why I leave it on the mold. Another kind of mold you could do is just like a bowl, right, with this kind of stuff. So here's our, see how nice it peels off of that Silpat? And it's really a neat thing. It's so pliable. But I could use this. Oh yeah, and then of course, I failed to mention, you need to lube up your mold. So this is a little bit of neutral oil, like just some canola oil. I think this is sunflower oil here. And I just put that over this, and I'm trying to make like a bowl with this one. But we'll see, kind of get the idea. But with these guys, you just want to brush them with the oil, and then you can put your form over it. So, you know, you could make a bowl, but let's go ahead and, well, this is still, I don't know if it's pliable enough still, but try to make another cone, right? See how it goes. Woo. It's starting to crisp up already, so, well, it's all right.
Chef Sam, we got a quick question. Can you make the cone recipe without any sugar is a question.
Make what?
Can you make the cone recipe with no sugar at all?
Oh, I think the sugar with the cone, the sugar is sort of necessary because we're really looking at, I mean, the sugar and flour, right? It's the same ratio, right? And so it's really, these are a lot about the egg white and the sugar, and almost, I mean, like a meringue almost in a way. So you definitely want to, excuse me, definitely, as far as I know, we need the sugar, but if you figure out a way to do it without the sugar, I mean, I haven't tried it, so I don't know. But as far as this recipe goes, I think the sugar is sort of necessary. Okay, So there you have it. Then you go ahead and let it cool like that on the mold again, because you don't, it'll want it to collapse. And then once they're cool, we can go ahead and add the chocolate plug, if you will. So you kind of need something to stand it on, and this is like a Lulabelle's heavy cream jar, which you would have if you buy the Lulabelle's cream at Basics Market. You have wonderful organic cream, and also a cone holder for pouring your chocolate plug into. So I have some chocolate, and I just use chocolate chips for this. And you know what? Chocolate chips are a good choice because chocolate chips tend to have less cocoa butter, so they don't melt so much. And for this purpose, you know, it's good to have something that's going to set up nice and hard. So I just put chocolate on a double boiler, and so that's just enough water, right, to come up to my secondary pot. Put the chocolate in there, bring it up to temp, and melt the chocolate. And then you can just leave your chocolate on the double boiler with the heat off, and that will keep it melted for working with. Yes, another question.
Wendy mentioned that you might be able to drop a miniature marshmallow on the bottom of the cone.
Ooh, that's a great idea. Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, anything you can drop in there, you know, that's nice to eat. You probably don't want to drop a piece of gravel or something like that, but you know, it's kind of a fun little surprise. And you know, there's just a little bit of a hole there, but it's fun to get. It's really delicious to get to that chocolate bottom. And then you could, you know, even dip the cone this way in chocolate, and that'd be nice as well. But there you go. And then I thought of another thing for utilizing another product that you would have, and this only works with the Gwendolyn's egg carton, that you could put your cone, knock out the bottom of some of these egg things, and then you could use this as a cone rack too, right? So there's some uses for the products. Okay, so that's the ice cream is working away here, and it's already starting to set up a little bit, which is great. And I did want to mention, as we go through this, a couple of my inspirations for this class and this recipe, and good books if you want to explore ice cream further. The Perfect Scoop by David Lebowitz, and this has so many great ice creams, including parsley ice cream, basil ice cream, green pea ice cream, but also you know, blackcurrant ice cream, cinnamon ice cream. It goes on and on. So many good formulas, but what this shows is how adding different ingredients sort of affect the freeze. And so it's a nice guide to, like, okay, if I add, you know, when you're ready to formulate your own ice creams, how to go about it. And there's just a lot of great add-in recipes in that one too. And then I also have looked at this Ben & Jerry's ice cream book, which has some good base formulas. And again, a lot of neat recipes to look at. So those are two. The strange thing about the Ben & Jerry's is they put, in this book, they recommend putting whole raw eggs into the ice cream, which I do not recommend. I always, even with those formulas in that book, I get my eggs up to 160 degrees because we want them pasteurized. Could work with a pasteurized egg, I guess, but want to be safe around the eggs. Yes.
A couple folks wondered if you could show the covers of the books again,
Oh,
so
yeah.
they could jot them down.
So this one is super great. David Lebowitz, The Perfect Scoop, and lots of super recipes in here, and good information about ice cream technique. And then this is Ben & Jerry's, who have a really good commercial ice cream, and then a lot of, again, neat ideas here. So those are some books to check out if you want to delve deeper into the world of ice cream, which is just fascinating. And it can be as simple as milk, cream, sugar, or as complicated as adding some of those other, stabilizers and stuff. And these are all things you can work on at home. Now, for the best part of ice cream is when it's done and you can eat it, right? And I was just remembering what a popular in-person class this always was because of this part. But there we go. It's my specialty, knocking stuff over. Okay, so without further ado, so I made of course we have the vanilla, this is the plain vanilla base, which is working here. So we have this guy and a scoop. And so what we did is we brought this out a few minutes ago to temper. And tempering ice cream, especially with a good pure ice cream that doesn't have those stabilizers and so forth in them, you want to bring them out to room temperature for a few minutes, even 5 to 10 minutes before you scoop them. And that is just helpful in getting it out of the carton. And you can see I have these neat little ice cream pint. These are 2 cups or a pint size. And out of this batch, you'll get 2 of these. But you can use like yogurt containers. Tupperware works great. Anything where you can have a lid that's going to seal it. One thing to keep in mind, it's like with these, they come with this little cardboard deal on top, which sticks to the top of the ice cream, and that helps reduce ice crystals. You can use a piece of wax paper or plastic wrap and just put it over the surface of the ice cream before it goes into the freezer. So as far as that goes, as soon as my ice cream machine tells me or it's ready or I see it's ready, and that's just when it starts to slow its whirring, I've added any add-ins, chocolate chunks, berries, whatever, into it. It's churned, it's slowed down a lot, somewhat frozen. I pour that into my container, or in your form, like Alice was talking about, like a different sort of form, whatever, and then put it into the freezer to harden, and then, or you can eat it right away, which is often just the best, like just right out of the deal there, right? So we have that, our nice vanilla, and we can add, since I have this melted chocolate here, let's put some of that on top. Make like a kind of a sundae type deal. Why not? And then we have the berry ice cream. So this, again, I took 2 cups of berries. I had some frozen blueberries and some frozen strawberries laying around. I just took a cup of each, half a cup of sugar, got it jammy over heat in a saucepan, and then chilled it. And then towards the end of my churn, I dumped that in, and then I got some berry ice cream. So let's see how that does. I have a pre-plugged cone here, and there we go, an ice cream cone of berry ice cream. And so that's sort of what I've got for you for this class. I hope you find ice cream inspiration here and give it a go. You know, it's fairly affordable to get into a quality ice cream maker. Like, I think you can get something pretty good for like $50 that's going to churn it, get that air pumped into it, and get you a nice smooth ice cream. And you can experiment with flavors, and even then get into experimenting with the amounts of milk and cream ratios and all this. Get it all dialed in for your personal taste. So I am going to eat this now. Thank you so much for joining us. Come back to future classes. Get your ingredients at Basics Markets around the Portland area. Visit our website if you like. We have more recipes there and past classes you can look at. And as always, happy cooking.